So when buying new gear, there's just so many options, too many options, so many brands. Within each brand, there's tons of cameras, tons of lenses, different price points, so many things to consider. But just one of those is buying new or buying used. And personally, I've bought a lot of used gear. I've also bought a lot of new gear. And I hope I can help you out, shed some light on when I buy used versus when I buy new. Buying used gear can really help save a couple bucks, especially when upgrading to a new lens, new camera body. But it makes it a little bit more nerve-wracking, right? Because you're not exactly sure who owned it, what happened to the lens. You know, you're not sure what you're exactly going to get. It's not brand new. So I made a little handy flow chart about how I make a decision of buying used or buying new. So once you've actually decided on, what you're going to buy, which is a whole process in and of itself, you don't want to just, buy a new camera to buy a new camera, buy a new lens because you see other people using it. You want to know that you're going to use it a lot, and you want to make sure it's useful for what you're actually photographing. I remember when I first started out, I bought an 8 to 15 fisheye because I was like, oh, that'll be fun. It'll be great for landscapes, or, it looks cool. And that was before I had a business. It was just for fun. Barely used that lens at all. But that's a whole nother video that needs to be made. So let's start with, say you're buying a lens. First thing you need to tell, is it in good condition or bad condition? Right? If the answer is no, don't buy it used. When looking at resale dealers, they tend to have a condition chart, excellent, excellent plus, bargain, right? You don't want to buy a bargain most likely unless you're really handy and you want to use it for parts or something like that, go for it. But typically I'm only buying, the top couple tiers when they say the optical quality is still good, may have a couple dings, my lenses and, everything is all dinged up, cracks, you got dials missing, joysticks missing. So not opposed to having dings in my gear, but if you're buying something used, it's new to you, you want to make sure it works. If you're buying from an individual, make sure you're really going to bring a camera body to test the lens out, or you're going to want to make sure, right, to inspect it before you're actually buying it. I personally haven't bought any lenses from an individual online. I've sold the stuff, it works. I typically would want to handle it first. Unless it's coming from an online dealer, they've used the gear to make sure that it's working. Now also, right, they have their ratings. Each different rating will have different price points. So you can save a little bit by choosing to get a lens that has a ding in it, but it's fine. It's just maybe some paint rubbed off on it, but it still works perfectly well. And you could also get one that doesn't have a case or something like that to also save a little bit of money. No harm in doing that if you don't really need that stuff. Now, if you can't be sure who you're buying from, again, I like to exercise caution, and I don't buy from, someone that I haven't heard of or can't tell if they're a legitimate seller on the marketplace. Now, I tend to buy my lenses used, and that's just because they're kind of built to last a lot longer. They can take more damage and still work well. And they've just been around. My 400's like 20 years old, still works great. Camera bodies, I mostly buy them new just because there's, shutter counts to worry about and just the electronics of them, things like that to make sure. I just like to peace of mind that it's new and in working order, and maybe I can have it under warranty or something like that. Now, if we're looking at a camera body, if you're looking at a used one, you do want to see what the shutter count is. So the shutter will wear out over time. I've had to replace a couple of mine in my camera bodies, and it's just, you take so many photos, it wears out, you get it replaced. Not too big of a deal. It's maybe a couple $100, but it's way better than buying a new camera. So if you're looking at a used camera, you kind of want to know, has it been used a lot? Am I going to have to replace the shutter? Because you're going to have to kind of add that to the cost of the used camera if you have to replace that shutter. Now, every camera has a different, shutter average lifespan. So you can look that up of the camera that you're looking to buy, and then you can ask the seller if they know the shutter counts and ask them what it's used for. If they're just kind of like taking videos or, doing some portrait stuff and they haven't used it a ton, the shutter count will probably be pretty low. If they're doing sports or time lapses, things like that, it's going to be a lot higher of a shutter count. So if it's a really high shutter count, I advise to probably not go with that camera unless it's a really low price and you can kind of know you're going to get the shutter replaced for $200 and that's still a good price for you. Go for it. Now, if it has a low shutter count, then let's proceed like we did with the lens. Also, when newer cameras come out, you can look to those professionals that might be buying those and getting rid of their old gear, and that's another great way to find used gear that's probably been taken care of well and they probably know what the shutter count would be and can give you a lot more information on how that camera body is doing. So to buy my used gear, I've used KEH and Hunt's, a local camera store here around the Boston area, and it's been great. Like I said before, I mostly buy the lenses I have used. It just saves me a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 depending on which lens I'm buying. I bought my 400 used a couple years ago. It's a Black Friday sale. Look out for those. If you know there's something you want, you know you can wait a little bit, wait for a time that they might have a sale. Because you never know what you can get. It knocked off like $2,000 off of the 400 because those things are so expensive. Now, I've sold gear through Craigslist and Facebook groups. It works. So there's people out there that are going to buy it. Personally, I wouldn't necessarily buy from those places. It may be a camera group where I might know someone who knows someone. I like to get it from the online retailers. Just a little bit more peace of mind for me. Now, don't forget that if you're upgrading, you can sell your old gear as well. So you can kind of build that into the cost when you're upgrading of like, all right, I know I can get $500 for my old camera. Make sure you know you're spending that on the new camera. And also when you're buying it, you can say, you know what, I might sell this in a couple years. And so really I'm just sort of, if I can buy this camera, this lens for $4,000, and in 2 years I might be able to sell it for $2,000, you know, you're really only doing $2,000 for that 2 years, and make sure it's worth it obviously for you. But I've had my 400 for 4 to 6 years now, and you know, it's done the job, and I can still probably get a couple $1,000s for it, which means I'm really only paying, you know, $300, $400 a year to have the privilege of shooting with it. So, you know, worst case scenario, I end up not wanting to do this anymore. I can sell my gear, still make some of that money back. So it is an investment. And again, look for those times where there might be sales, like I said before, or even, right, newer cameras coming out. Those slightly older camera bodies are going to be a little bit discounted because they're just trying to move them off. It's a good time to get those. They're all great cameras. So much gear that you can make great photos with that isn't necessarily the top of the line from Sony or Canon or Nikon, whatever you're looking at. All right, I hope this helped you save a little bit of money and make some great photos. If you have any gear buying, selling tips, let me know. Always looking to learn more. See you next time.